you would, if you know someone that needs to be here, that's not going to be here physically, they can go to the Jefferson Street Facebook page or YouTube page. They'll be able to tune in. So you better want to shoot them a text and let them know that they can participate with us that way. It's important for us to be here tonight. It is vital that we're here tonight. Our voices and the voices of our Black caucus are ones that are being marginalized even the more in our state. It's so important that our community remains connected. Amen? Amen. Amen. So I'm so glad that you're here. Listen, for housekeeping rules, we will try to keep this middle aisle open so that we can make sure we get good camera angles for the media. At the end, when the question and answer portion is open, we'll ask that you'll come to this microphone here and speak boldly so we can make sure that those in the room and those on the stream can hear your question. Restrooms are out of the sanctuary to your left. The men's and women's restrooms are there for you and for your use, and we're looking forward to having a wonderful conversation tonight. Thank you for being here, and let's engage our legislators. Let's not hold back, let's not be coy, but let's have real conversation that helps us move the needle forward for our communities. Amen? Amen. Would you all help me welcome Ms. Sissy Brown? She's going to serve as our moderator for this evening. All right.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you, I'll introduce you in a second, for allowing me to do this. I see it's not a lot of young people out here, and I'm going to pose that question to the panel here later, but thank you all for coming. I know that this is very important. It's across the state, and it's something that needs to be done, whether people are here or not, because it's live streaming. It can be played back, and people can get their views seen from you all. So I'm going to thank, first of all, and introduce State Representative and the President of the Tennessee Black Caucus, Mr. Antonio Parkinson. Everybody give it up here. I let him speak now because he's going to do a little overview. But first, the purpose of this is to hear from you, the citizens, and it's across the state. They're going to many states. They've already gone to some, and there's still some to come, while discussing new laws that are pushed by them. So this is very important. These are laws that they make, that they create, that they encourage, and we are here to support them or, negate them, to discuss why they're doing it, the purpose of it, and things like that, so that you can get your questions answered, so that you can have a clear view of what they're doing. So, Mr. Parkinson, if you will.
I can accommodate that. But we've been on tour, we've been touring the state, and we had to stop in Knoxville, and we stopped in Chattanooga. And now we're here in Nashville, and then next week we'll be in Memphis, and then we're adding, I think, 2 more dates, 2, possibly 3 more dates after the Memphis stop. But our purpose, like as Ms. Brown stated, is to hear from you. We want to hear from you. We set our focus and our target this year and our agenda, well, actually last year, on health, education, and how can we put money back into your households. And we feel like those 3 agenda items will help to improve people's quality of life. Now, let me be clear. It doesn't mean that every other issue that's out there is not important, because every issue is important to us. There are enough issues for us to spread around to everyone inside of the Tennessee Capitol, I promise you that. But we want to focus on those core issues, making sure that you can access a doctor, a quality doctor, when you need to without breaking the bank. Making sure that you have your children and you as an adult have access to quality education, making sure that we try to reduce taxes. When the last time you heard Democrats or Black elected officials focusing on reducing taxes for you? We want to put money back into your household so that you can keep a roof over your head. We're in trying times, right? Everybody, we just nod your head if you agree. We're in trying times, so we want to make sure that your quality of life is the best that it can possibly be while we're in this office. And we ask you to use us while we're in this office. Real quick, just a couple housekeeping things. Before my colleagues introduce themselves, let me thank Sissy Brown for being here. She answered the call. Y'all give her a round of applause. She's an amazing sister right here in Nashville, and I'm glad she's part of my extended family from Nashville.
Make sure you listen to the morning show, K's Food Morning Show on 92.
There you go. There you go. Don't give it a
I'm
real.
going to put it out.
Give it a real.
We'll be on tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock.
And I love coming on the show. And also, let me thank the good Rev. Good Rev, wave your hand, Rev.
Yes, Rev.
Yes, for letting us in the house. We appreciate y'all. Give them a round of applause. Thank you for that. And now I will turn it over. We'll start on this end with the Democratic Caucus Chair, one of my great friends, too, personal friends, Mr. Vincent Dixie.
All right.
Thank you. My name is Representative Vincent Dixie. I represent District 54. I'm also the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. So, let's do it just leave it at that and make it short and small.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brenda Gilmore, your state senator. Thank you for that. And I'll just take this opportunity to thank you for the confidence that you have bestowed on me over the last years. I've had the honor of serving as 4 years as executive committee woman and 8 years as Metro Council for this area and 12 years as the state representative. And the last 4 years after the legendary Senator Harper retired, I ran for her position and was elected as state senator. So thank you so much. I have officially announced that I am retiring, so effectively November the 7th, I will be passing the reign on. So thank you again for your confidence and for your vote and your support over the years.
Good evening, everyone. Harold Love, State Representative, House District 58. Glad to have you all here. Particularly glad to have you in the 58th District tonight as we have this town hall meeting.
Good evening, my name is Sam McKenzie. I'm State Representative District 15, Knoxville, part of Knox County. It's great to be here tonight. I will say, I'll give a shameless plug that I'm a proud graduate of Fisk University.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, my name is State Representative Jesse Chisholm, District 85, Memphis, Tennessee. Just so glad to be here, and it's just an honor to be before you all. Thank you.
Thank you. So all of you go all over Tennessee? You all are going all over Tennessee? Awesome. See, that's what I'm talking about, commitment, dedication to our people. So I want to get this started. Whoever wants to answer, just pick up the mic wherever you are. But we're going to start with these mass shootings. South Carolina, Philadelphia, Chattanooga. There have been so many over the weekend, and we just want to know, and I'm speaking as a collective because I'm sure everyone wants to know, where's this coming from all of a sudden? Why is it that it is so free now for people to just go in one was at a nightclub, one was at a mall, one was in the street. Just someone just sprang into the crowd. What do you think should be done about this? And how do we go about getting it done? Yes, anybody can believe. Okay, I'll take a stab at it. I know that there are many answers. I'm not sure that there's one solution, but one of the things is just the abundance of guns that's in our community and how free and easy it is to get guns. As you probably know, our General Assembly passed a bill, and I think I'm safe to say that all of us probably voted against it, to do away with background checks. And it's called the permitless carrier. And you can anybody can just purchase a gun without any kind of check to make sure that you are stable and you are mentally competent, and I think that has increased. We've seen an increase in homicides since that time. We've seen an increase in guns stolen from vehicles since that time, and we've seen copycat mass shootings since that time. I think just in the last week we've seen 2 mass shootings near our homes in Chattanooga, and so I think that also contributed to that. There was a bill that I sponsored, and then House Representative London Lamar was the House sponsor regarding identifying gun violence as a health epidemic, and we didn't get very far that. I think now Senator London Lamar passed it over to you,
Chairman Parkinson, and I don't even think that they would hear it in the House over there. But certainly there's not one answer, but one of them has to do with the abundance of guns that's in this community and how freely it is to get a gun. In fact, there was even a bill there at this General Assembly lowering the age to 18, although I think that went down in smoke.
Thank you, Senator. Cecily, one thing you said that it sounds like we have them all of a sudden. We're not having them all of a sudden. This is continually happening. Right now, it's just becoming to light. It's getting a little bit more awareness and notoriety of what's going on. And what affects us in our neighborhood, and one of the things that, mass shootings are terrible, but we don't have an AR-15 problem, these assault weapon problem here in our communities. It's the illegal handguns that we have issues with, that we have a problem with. So we have to figure out a way to get the guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them, and to make sure that they don't have them.
So real quick, I have a question. So we say, and I've heard this a lot, we have to figure out a way to get the guns out. Okay, we've been saying this for a long time. We have to figure it out. When are we gonna figure it out? Are there any suggestions that are on the floor to figure it out? Or is it still something that's up in the air?
Thank you for that. It's almost like we practiced this when we did it. So one of the things that I would like, one of the pieces of legislation that I would like to do, and it's kind of all out the legislation in North Carolina, you have to have a registration card for each gun you have. And you have to register it every 5 years, I think, to make sure that everything's updated. But I would like to take it a step further to add a piece there where if you go buy some ammunition, you have to have this registration card with you, and you can only buy ammunition for the gun that you're registered to have. What that does is, if you have an illegal gun, you won't be able to get bullets for it.
That's right.
And we have to make sure, and at that point, it becomes just a paperweight. And so we have to figure out what that penalty is if someone is caught selling bullets to someone who shouldn't have those guns and make it stiff. And we're gonna have to fight the gun store owners on this, because this is how they make a lot of money on this, selling ammunition. But I'm ready for that fight. And I just need you to be with me. And like I said, one of the things that we also did, that's just something that I was thinking, reading, tired, like, what can I do? And that idea came from talking in the barbershop. But I need this conversation down here because I don't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers. But that's just something I want to start with. But what are the other things that we can do? And another thing is that we can make sure that we have insurance on the guns, so you're required to have gun insurance. I don't know how far that'll get, but these are a couple of things that we can do to just get the ball rolling to start with and just stop talking about it.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Senator and Representative, and I'm not gonna say that, I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's a complicated, multi-pronged attack, so I'm going in a different direction. And it's on yesterday when we had painting of a mural. It was the revealing of a mural that has all the faces of the children that have died since 2000 in Knoxville, Knox County, due to gun violence. My alma mater, high school alma mater, we lost 6 students within 4 or 5 month period. They're in Knoxville, and all African Americans. So a lot of what we need to do is point our fingers inward as well. We know in our families that there's some guns in our households that should not be there. We know that there is some income coming in that seems to be unconventional. We're going to have to say it's time. It's time that we are killing each other. Just dealing with that slice of, yes, there are some horrible things going on in Buffalo, but Chattanooga's an inside job. So we're going to have to get back to let's start at home, but let's look inside and let's stop these killings of friends. We had in Knoxville, a friend killed another friend because of an argument, and the gun was there, so it's convenient, and I'm mad, and I don't have that ability to count to 10. So now my friend is dead. So it's everything we're talking about, but it's that as well.
Thank you so much. As we all know, this has been such a devastating issue. when we were in Chattanooga, I made mention, I'll do the same thing. I want to give a vantage point on why some of our colleagues think that they're passing some of these gun laws. For my 4 years of being at the state capitol, I've noticed that a lot of bills, they come down not even black and white, they come down to rural versus urban. Like for many of our rural representatives, when they hear a gunshot at 7 o'clock in the morning, they assume that someone's hunting.
Right.
When we hear a gunshot at 7 o'clock in the morning, we assume that something bad has happened.
That's right.
Because you can't have the same set of you can't have as loose of gun laws in cities like Nashville, Memphis, Chattanooga, where people live, or you have large numbers of people that live in a small area. So it takes more to be safe in areas like ours than it does their areas where their next neighbor may be 2 or 3 miles away. So I believe the first thing we need to do is to restore our permitting process. That's the first thing we need to do. When we decide to send everybody out there to go get a gun and say it's permitless carry, anyone can carry a gun, that's one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation that this state has seen in a very long time.
Amen.
And the first thing we need to do is fight them, repeal that bill, so we can at least start the conversation of thinking of better ideas to do gun control. But the way this state is right now, we put ourselves in a dangerous precedent.
I'd like to know why did they pass this law? I'm gonna turn to you, but it's like, why would you do that? Just say, oh, basically anyone can get a gun, you don't have to have a background check. Why would that be something that would be beneficial to anyone?
Yeah, so, special interest, you hear that word tossed around over and over and over, special interest, special interest. So special interest would be somebody like the NRA. The NRA funds a lot of the campaigns that are for these individuals that are elected, specifically on the Republican side of it, right? And so in order to be deemed as a good boy by the NRA, they passed this legislation. Now think about it, permitless carry, it was absolutely unnecessary for the state of Tennessee. There was no real reason to even pass that outside of getting an A+ grade with the NRA. And I want you to think about something. I want you to think about this. I'm a Marine, so I'm not anti-gun. I think most people are pro-Second Amendment, to be totally honest with you. I think most people are. But we tend to be pro-Second Amendment with common sense, right? And so, I think anybody that wants to own a gun, that is of age, should be able to own and possess a gun. But I believe in my heart that they should go through a gun safety course. I think that we should be pushing more gun safety programs, more gun safety opportunities for people, especially in our communities. When I went to get permitted, I'm a carrier. Permitted carrier, but I took my daughter, she was 11 at the time, I took her with me to the gun safety class that I went through to get my permit. And I let her test at 11 years old. And then I took her to shoot at 11 years old. But I don't have to worry about her picking up a gun in my house if there's a gun, on the counter in my house. Because she's gone through the gun safety class. She's felt the power of a gun in a safe environment. And been taught by myself. I learned this from white folks. They've been raising their kids, teaching their kids gun safety since their kids were old enough to hold a gun. But we've been being taught that, guns are dangerous. We shouldn't have them in our house. To be honest with you, we're the ones that probably need them in our house more than anybody. We're between the folks that shouldn't have the guns and the other folks on there that's building up and packing up their gun arsenal and other folks. We definitely need ours for our safety. And then let me tell you, you got to look at this thing like a chessboard from the top down. One of the pieces of legislation that they were running this year was to give vouchers to people for gun safety classes so they can get a reduction in the cost of their gun safety class if they bought a gun from a gun dealer. Now, most of us don't buy guns from gun dealers. We might buy one from a pawn shop. We might buy one from somewhere else, you know. We might buy one personally from somebody, right? But the gun dealers, those were the gun shows. That's where the gun dealers at. So who does that look like? What does that demographic look like, right? Doesn't look like you, right? The other bill, the other thing that they did pass, they slipped into the budget. They said, we're going to teach gun safety to children that want to hunt. That doesn't look like y'all. It looks like Jesse every now and then, but doesn't look like y'all, right? Your children aren't out there hunting for the most part. So you know what that means, right? That's a dog whistle. So that means we're going to teach gun safety classes to white kids under TWRA and put it in the budget. And I was asking, well, why is that not available? That $500,000 not available for everyone. I want my kids at Raleigh Egypt in North Memphis to get the gun safety classes too. Right. But they, you see where they're trying to push it, right? And then the last thing I'm going to close with this is that this is what I stood up and said when they were running permitless carry. Permitless carry is going to be an issue for our communities because of ignorance of the law. You cannot just pull your gun just because you don't have to have a permit to carry it now. That's a felony. That's a felony. And God forbid if you shoot somebody under this quote unquote permitless carry, you shoot someone and that person was stealing a bike or stealing something out of your shed, that's a felony. And you're going to be the one that ends up paying the price in prison because of ignorance of the law. So that's why I wanted to push for the money for the gun safety training so that our people will not be perishing because of ignorance.
That's right.
Thank you all for your answers to that question. Give them a hand. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, so just hold your questions until then. But we're going to continue. And Mr. Love, I'm going to start with you about the governor's school funding. And I want to know what you think about it, and if you could tell everybody exactly what it is and your stance on it.
Thank you so very much for our listening audience, both online and here. The way we fund public education is through a program called BEP, and this stands for the Basic Education Program that we have here. The trouble is the program is 30 years old, and one of the central themes of that program funding is that depending upon the school district's funding body, the city of Nashville, the city of Springfield, wherever that city or county may be, you then will pay a certain percentage of local contribution toward it. And they call this fiscal capacity. So for a city like Nashville, because we have higher rates of houses being sold, because we have those houses sold at higher rates being sold at higher numbers, they assume that our property taxes may be able to be increased. And because our median income is higher than other counties, this now, according to the fiscal capacity piece, says that Nashville should contribute more toward the funding of students in Metro than maybe some other county pays, and the state will kick in a certain portion. So the other challenge is that over the last 30 years, we've not funded in the basic education program school nurses, school counselors, school social workers. Yes, there's money in there, but not as much money as our schools need. There also was not a good balance of money for improvement of our school buildings. So we have this new program called TISA, which is designed to revamp BEP and include weights for students. So if a student is in poverty, they get a certain weight. If a student is in concentrated poverty, they get additional weight. If a student is in need of other language support, they get a certain weight. And if you live in a smaller county, you get a certain weight. And so it starts off with a basic funding amount, approximately $6,000, and then those weights add to that. The trouble that many of us had, as myself and President McKenzie and Dixie and Parkinson, Senate Education Committees, One of the main problems we had with the package was that we felt it was rushed because we got the bill maybe 3 weeks before we were supposed to adjourn. We also had concerns about accountability because if your child has these weights that contribute more money to the school district is supposed to have programs that help your child be able to learn in spite of those issues that he or she may be in. But there was no accountability to say that if a child at Pearl Cone generates $4,000 in funding because they may need additional learning supports, there was no accountability to say that they will have a program specifically designed for them. It was just left up to the superintendent to design and implement a program, and hopefully that will be able to help their child. So that's just the basics. I don't want to dive too deep into it. I know it's a lot to take in, but that's the general concern we had, was the fact that there was no accountability. The program was rushed. We were given the bill in the last 3 weeks of session, and having to explain to people what TISA looks like is difficult because there are a lot of moving parts in it, and many of us push for some changes. I specifically push for a thing called the cost differential, which speaks to the fact that you live in a county where the private salaries are higher than that of the education salaries, the teachers and the support staff, then you naturally will have an increase in the cost of living. And so the cost differential started out at 100% and is now down to 16%. And TISA was designed to completely take the cost differential out. But we got a provision that hopefully will allow us to fund the cost differential and save us some money.
The only thing that I would add to that is, you know, as Representative Love talked about these weights, and these weights are necessary weights. You know, there is a rule weight, and they should have a weight. So I'm not pushing against that because they have unique situations that they have to deal with. But we in urban areas have those same weights, and so we weren't afforded to have an urban weight because we deal with situations that are extremely unique that folks in Trousdale County or Bledsoe County just doesn't deal with. So again, the conversation is what we wanted. Look, I have no misnomers. I'm a minority in a minority party. If all of us got up and walked out of the House session, business as usual, we understand that. But at least we can represent our 70,000 people, and we weren't given the opportunity to do that. I would say a third of the way through the conversation, after a rush process, rush through committees, rush to the House floor, the conversation just cut off abruptly. And that, to me, being a freshman legislator, that's unfair. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure the citizens of the state of Tennessee fully understands the pluses, the minuses, and then we can go to the voting polls and decide in that fashion. But just to cut off the whole conversation, to me, was extremely unfortunate. Not just from the minority party, but for all Tennesseans. This is important. As Representative Love said, this has been a 30-year process that we're undoing in 3 weeks. And so that didn't happen, but we're going to continue to push to make the piece of legislation that was passed this past year better each year going forward.
Mr. Dixie.
Thank you. We keep using the word rush, and I just want people to understand when we say word rushed, what we really mean by rushed. And 30 years ago when they did this, it took them 3 years to get to this because of a lawsuit. It still took the governor and the administration at least 3 years to come up with this particular DEP formula that we're under right now. This year we spent 5 weeks to something that's going to potentially impact us for 10, maybe 20 years. So I just want people to understand the magnitude of when we say that it's rushed. And I want to go back to what Representative Parkinson said, that one bill on its own doesn't look bad, but it's a lot of other things that come into play that when you look at it as in totality, that's where the issue is. Like for instance with the TISA, it will, and I do believe that it needs to be overhauled, but I think it could get there, it just needs more vetting. But what it does is attaches the money to the student, which goes in hand with the ESAs, the educational savings accounts, right? It makes it easier to take the money with the student wherever you're going to put them in the private school or wherever you want to spend this money. Second, they passed the Charter School Commission, which bypasses our local educational agencies, which is called LEAs. So now the MMPS, they don't have to approve these charter schools, they can go straight to this commission. And who's on this commission? The commissions are appointed by the governor, which align with his thoughts. So then you add the book commission on top of that. So now they're going to control a lot of things. So when you look at it all together, one-on-one, it doesn't, and maybe not ring a bell, but when you look at it all together, we should be out here screaming at the top of our lungs because they're going to basically sell out public education. And we have to be ready for that and be aware of what's going on. So that's just what I want to add to that.
Thank you. Let me add one last thing about teaching. Do we have any educators in here? I'm sure we do. If you're an educator, raise your hand. Okay, y'all give them a round of applause. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't do it. I'd be going to jail. He smacked somebody's kid. But here's the thing. Here, y'all. So, I forgot to get a disclaimer. I'm the uncut legislator, y'all. So y'all, I'm uncut with mine. So I'm not as nice as my colleagues are, but I thank them for their niceness because I need it. But here's where I voted for TISA, just for the record, so you know, I voted for it because it was another $115 million that went to Shelby County kids, so Shelby County schools. And I do have some concerns about it though, because it's a very imperfect bill. But I ran on strong, decisive leadership. I'm not going to waffle. I'm not going to stay in the middle. I'm going to decide one way or the other on whatever bill comes before me. But here's what I tried to get added to it that I wasn't able to get on, but I'm very passionate about this. So a lot of y'all remember the Achievement School District, right? The state-run school district that would take over the schools and then put another school in its place. Well, we almost got it killed. It's on life support. So. But what I was looking at was, when they come in to take over these schools or call for accountability in these schools, usually the persons that take the hit for the schools is the principal and the teachers, right? So they'll get rid of the principals and the teachers, or they'll take over the school and put a charter school in its place, or whatever. But I asked the Commissioner of Education this, and I asked the Governor this too. I said, when, if ever, have you asked the teacher or the principal, did the school district give them everything they needed to move the school forward? And none of them, I'm talking about the Commissioner of Education and the Governor and the Assistant Deputy Commissioners. No one could remember a time in history where they asked the principal before they either closed their school or replaced their school or fresh start at the school with a whole new staff, ask them, hey, did the administration, did the district give you everything that you needed to move the school forward? So what I proposed was every principal at the beginning of the year will put together a proposal for how they want to see the funding that their school generates go into their school and what those resources will be allocated for. And now, you have to understand TISA. The way TISA works is just like BEP was. All of the money even though the money is generated per pupil, so you got a base salary was a little bit over $6,000, Representative Leader Love? 68, almost $7,000. And then if you're a Title I school or if you're in a high poverty area, there's more money added. If you're an ESL, more money added, this, that, and other, right? But the money still goes to the district. And the district decides how the money is allocated. So that money doesn't go directly to the school. So what I said was, let those principals put a proposal together uncoerced by the district and leave it on the desk for the next 3 years. And if that school does not perform, we're going to revisit that proposal and then do an overlay as to what the district provided to that principal and see where the real problem is. And since now the problem may be that the principal sucked. Told you I was uncut. Sorry, Pastor, pray for me. But that may be the problem. But the problem may also be that the district did not allocate the resources that were needed for that principal to actually move them children forward. And if that's the case, then that school does not need to be closed down, that principal does not need to be fired. Maybe we need to take a look and eyeball the district and see what's really going on, possibly, if that's the case. So thank you, Joanne.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to add one thing. I think Representative Chisholm hit on this earlier when he was talking about the urban versus the rural. And I think that is one of the issues that we have been confronted with doing these general assemblies, that our needs are different and unique, and I'm not sure that this General Assembly appreciates those differences. For example, in Davidson County, we receive less funding through the educational plan, and I think it amounts because immigrant students were not taken into consideration. And it's the same thing with the ESA, which is the educational, savings account, which allots $7,000 for students, or better known as the voucher system. It only impacts Memphis, Shelby County, and Davidson County. And so my question would be, if it's good enough for Davidson County and Shelby County, why isn't it good enough for the rest of the counties in the state of Tennessee? And why did the speaker have to hold the voting board open 40 minutes to even get enough votes to pass the ESA? That would tell you that something is wrong with the program. If none of the other legislators want it in their counties, they don't think it's good enough for their counties, then it should not be good enough for Davidson County and Shelby County. And I think that is one of the issues that we constantly face. It is rural. Unfortunately, it should not be. It's rural against urban districts.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers. I want to take a moment, pause just for a second to recognize the people in the building. Any clergy in the building, elected officials, or candidates that are running for office, could you please stand so we can recognize all of you? And that's question, it's kind of a general question, but it's an individual answer question. I would like to know, and I'm sure they would too, what is the most important issue, project on the floor, or that you want to come to the floor for Tennessee that you feel like is really important at this moment?
I'll start. We'll work our way down. The one thing that I think we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the gun violence. I don't know if anybody saw this today, but the governor put out an executive order that was basically going to turn out schools into prisons. You know, they want to add more SRO officers, put more guns in the schools, put fences around them. Well, I don't want my kids to go to school and to prison. I want them to go to school and I want them to feel safe. So this executive order, to me, was nothing more than thoughts and prayers put on paper. That's all it was. It was meaningless. It meant nothing. It did nothing. It's putting more work on people who are already underpaid and underappreciated. So I think that we have to address that. This is the time to do what we need to do. We can't pass the buck, like you said, Sissy said earlier. You know, we all talk about this, but what are we going to do? We have proposals that we're going to, for legislation that we're going to do. And hopefully we get some more ideas tonight. But we are done with just letting the time by till it passes over, till there's another mass shooting or something happens closer to home. Then we want to take action. So for me, that is number one. That subsides everything that I need to focus on. Is just how do I get these guns and stop the killings that happen every day. And it seems like it's getting younger and younger, and where the 20-year-olds now are 18 and 17 and 16 and 13, and I'm just tired of it. And I know just being tired is not going to do it, but we got to do something. But I think that I have enough people with me that we can do something. We can force some of these issues.
I wanted to bring to your attention about an amendment that's going to be on the ballot in November. It's called the Right to Work Amendment. And I'm asking you all to vote no on that amendment. The amendment, if passed, would add a new section to the Tennessee Constitution to make it illegal for workplaces to require labor union membership for their employees. And it sounds like it's something good when people hear right to work, oh, I should vote for this. That gives everybody the right to work. But it's really something to tilt the balance to big corporations at the expense of working families. So when you see right to work, please vote no on that. In all the states that have right to work laws, the wages are lower than anywhere across the country. And I think somebody's going to talk about this abolish slavery too when they have an opportunity. So, Mr. Chairman, when we get to that point, we have someone in the audience going to talk about that in a minute.
Before you get started, if you would have a question, you can go ahead and start lining up at the microphone. And make sure that you keep your questions and comments below 1 minute so that everyone can get an opportunity. But just go ahead and line up, and if it's too many people, just hold on and then come when the line goes down. But we're going to continue with this question, and then we're going to start with your questions.
I too think that your safety right now is the number one issue that I'm hearing from these town hall meetings also. And I remember I was getting gas at Kroger last week, and I actually put this up on my social media page. I was getting gas, and the whole time I was thinking, am I close enough to get to my gun? Am I going to be, I'm having to look around and really pay even more attention to my surroundings because of all the mass shootings that are going on. And think about that. Now I'm living in fear every day because of all of this stuff that's happening. We're not even having mass shootings now, once a year, twice a year. We're starting to have them weekly. Think about that. We're having them weekly now. And then the worst thing that can happen is we become desensitized to these mass shootings that are happening. And then when they happen, we just go on about business as usual, as if that's normal. That's abnormal. That's completely abnormal. And really, it could cause mental health issues on a mass of people, and not just the person that's doing it. But if you're constantly living in a spirit of fear or a state of fear, we probably all need counseling now, to be totally honest with you. And so the gun violence and the mass shootings, that is the number one issue for me right now.
For the past 4 years, I have been working on sickle cell disease legislation. We were able to get it now so that the state produced a report every year specifically stating what treatments they have going on now and what treatments are available for a person with sickle cell disease. The benefit of this is that it forces the state to be creative in their approach to treating sickle cell. It forces the state to be transparent about what they're doing to reduce incidence of sickle cell disease. And so we've also been getting some money in the budget this year, I think $100,000 towards Sickle Cell Disease Foundation. So for me to continue to push for more expanded money and services for sickle cell disease is something I'm going to work on to get back in session in January.
Mine is criminal justice reform, but that is it's an unwieldy beast because our crime rate hasn't gone up, but the number of incarcerated citizens has gone up by a bunch, 6-8 times. So we're arresting way too many people for non-violent offenses. If you looked at what a marijuana offense would have gotten someone back in the 80s and 90s, and what it gets now, there are people still in jail because of that. And if they sold this product too close to a park, to here, or at that street close to Hampton Park, it multiplied it by 3. So, and once you go in, so that's one aspect. And for our males, if they have child support arrears or they have an underage child, that child support continues to accrue, and they can't vote when they come out. They can't be whole citizens when they come out until they get that court cost down to 0. So I've had several pieces of legislation just to try to get to that. Our governor says he wants criminal justice reform. I've not seen it yet. I'm looking, and he talks about even the school zone sentencing. But there's not been a lot of people, and they have to go out and hire lawyers to do this. It's simple. If it was done, and if you got the factor of 3, get rid of it. And if it's that person serving their term, kick them loose. These are our brothers and sisters. Most of them going to be back next to being our neighbors. So why not get them ready for that process? So that would be my a big push.
Okay, for me, over the last 4 years, I've kind of been on a crusade to end solitary confinement in the state of Tennessee. This year, we made one of our first and biggest blows, where we actually passed legislation to end solitary confinement for pregnant women, because no woman should carry, give birth to, or nurse a child in a state of isolation. Because when we have practices like that in place, we're creating monsters. We're not rehabilitating people. We're setting people up so we can re-incarcerate them. So that's the first one that we actually passed this past year. Another piece of legislation that's related that we're working on now is to now end solitary confinement for our juveniles. That's also a bill that I've been carrying for 4 years, because when you have a 15, 14-year-old child, let's call them what they are, they're children. And one thing my father always told me, 2 things God don't give you at the same time, is youth and good sense. So, with that being said, we have to give our youth an opportunity to, even though they make mistakes, we shouldn't allow their parents to have their future taken away from them. So that's what we're working on.
Thank you so much. Those are amazing. Everyone give them a hand. Thank you so much for being your own personal out there. Now it's time for question and answer. Again, please keep your comments and your questions to under 1 minute so that we can give everyone an opportunity to ask questions and get all of their questions answered. Go ahead.
Good evening. So I'll ask all of my questions since I only have 1 minute.
Is there someone that you want to send it to, or is it general?
General.
Okay.
General, okay. What is permitless carry? Can the gun license renewal be every 2.5 years instead of 5 years? Can there be an education course offered for gun safety for 12th graders? For the funding that the Republicans get from the NRA, can there be a cap on that amount? Or if there is a cap, how much is it? And can there be a general health crisis bill that includes the gun crisis in the little, description?
Okay. Do you want to start?
He said answer them all. They can get them all, but it's $7,500 per pack. I think it's $1,600 per individual is what they can give. But they have friends that are in the NRA, so it's additive. It's a whack-a-mole kind of a deal in terms of campaign finance reform. So that one's tough. In terms of the permitless carry, technically speaking, now, since we passed that bill in 21, you don't have to have a permit. It doesn't have 2.5, 5 years. Currently, it is 5 years for a permit. Now, I still encourage everyone to go out and get a permit. I too have one. That training class was outstanding. You learn a whole lot. And there's the reciprocity involved, which means you can cross over to Georgia, or to Alabama, or to Virginia, and still have that permit. But technically speaking, in the state of Tennessee, all you have to be is 21 years old. And they try to get it down to 18, so we're still fighting that. That'll be right back and forth. I don't know what the other ones were, if anyone else can pick up. Oh, to 12th grade training. Now, I know someone had it. I don't know, was that you had a bill on that one? So go ahead, Mark.
Well, thank you for that. So, unfortunately, they didn't make it for you. They made it for those that were to go through TWRA through hunting classes. And if you know of some hunting classes that are happening at Pearl Con or anywhere, let me know. And maybe that's something we should do. Maybe we should put the hunting classes in the inner city, so we can get some of this gun safety training too. So if Superintendent Battle and Superintendent Ray are hearing this, we need hunting classes now, right? So thank you.
What was your name? Where are you from?
Daisy LaCroix. I live in Davidson County right now.
Thank you. Please say your name and where you're from, and then ask your question.
Good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Coleman Robinson. I live here in Davidson County. I have two questions. First of all, I want to know if anything that y'all doing that about the voucher bill, because the speaker lied to me. I'm the one he lied to, that said he would never vote for a voucher bill. I want to make sure. And then the second question, I want you to explain to everyone what's happening in the Department of Children's Services.
Wants the vouchers first, let's do vouchers first.
Better go ahead on.
Well, I'll answer since I'm the only one up here that wasn't in the General Assembly when the voucher bill was passed. But I know unfortunately, a lot about it, as they talked about earlier, as Senator Gilmore said, it was unconventional how that bill even came to pass. Normally, just real quick, they'll open up the vote in the House, and 7-8 seconds later, it's closed. And they take the vote. 40 minutes. It stayed open 40 minutes. And you know what was going on. Arms were being twisted, promises were being made, and a gentleman out of the richest part of Knox County, my county, was the deciding vote to institute a program in Shelby County, as far away from Knox County and Davidson counties. So again, it was a political hack job, unfortunately. And the one court ruled it unconstitutional. Unfortunately, that was overturned. I don't think we're done with it. I'm good with private schools. Private schools, hey, they have a point and a purpose. But private schools should be paid for with private dollars. And that's it. It's not an issue. It's not public versus private, but my tax dollars should go for public education.
That's right.
And that is the horrendous part of this voucher bill. That it's not right. It's not the way it's supposed to be set up. Let's make our schools the best. And then, if we're using those funds to do that, then I'm good with it. But to use those public funds for private schools just makes absolutely no sense.
I think that some of the other issues as well that surround the voucher program is it's only for $7,000. And to go to some of the high quality private schools, it is much more than $7,000 a year. So my fear is that it's going to push parents into borrowing money so their children can go to these schools. Or we will have pop-up private schools who we'll see a bunch of fraud will be involved. And then the last thing I'll say about that is when you look at where the voucher programs are in the states across the country, those students have not performed as high as some of our public schools, particularly in math and reading.
And I want to answer your second question. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
Just one last thing about your bill. I want you to know why exactly it was illegal. We have a thing called the home rule. Home rule says that you cannot pass legislation that affects just one or two counties unless it is done by 2/3 vote of the body. So in other words, you cannot have a bill that passed by one vote that affects just Davidson and Shelby County. And that's the premise of why the court originally said that the way it was passed was illegal. Now, of course, now the Tennessee Supreme Court has overturned the lower court by saying that home rule applies to every other bill but education bills. All right, so I want to always, as much as I can, give you education about how we got to where we are. So be vigilant about it because it's going back to the original court to rule, but that was the premise of why the original court said it was unconstitutional because it violates home rule. And my colleagues will tell you, anybody who's let a bill come through local government knows that you must have a letter from your local body saying that they have asked you to bring this bill. So if we bring a bill saying that, you know, you want a hotel motel tax increase in Robertson County, they require you to have a letter from that local government saying, we want this. And so the same thing applies in talking home rule. You cannot just go and pass legislation that affects, again, one or two counties without it being by 2/3 of the body. And so this bill passed by one vote. So I just want to give you the background of the illegality of that.
Thank you. The second question, Mr. Dixon?
Well, the second part of the question, I'll make it real quick, because I don't want to pile up on the questions. The second part about the DCS question, it's interesting that you said that, because traveling throughout the state, I thought it was a Davidson County problem. It's not, it's a statewide problem. You know, we have children sleeping in offices, which leads to not having showers, not going to school because they don't want to go to school because they're not properly maintained. So I sit on a committee called the Government Operations, and it oversees all the agencies in Tennessee. So what I could do is possibly ask the chairman, and it's under his purview, to bring an agency in and try to explain to this. But like I said, it's only 3-4 Democrats that sit on that, and it's 20 people probably in there. And so getting that pressure on is the one thing that I've tried to do, is use our power through the press to bring awareness to this. With my press secretary, which is Ken Joe, he just happened to be sitting over there, stand up, Ken, say hi. Anyway, he does a great job with helping us get the awareness out, because we have to put pressure on it. And the same thing like in Murfreesboro with the judge that was incarcerating the kids at a higher rate, put pressure on them to get, there's the way, that wasn't the outcome that I wanted, but we did get her out of office. I wanted her to not be able to have her pension, right? But at least there was some victory in this. So sometimes it's the power of the awareness and the advocacy that kind of gets us to where we need to do. And so that's one of the things that I continue to bring awareness to, because I just thought it was oversight here in Davidson County, but it's happening all over the state. And that's unfair to our children when you set them back even more by not giving them the support and the resources they need. And in addition to us having all these reserves, and these agencies that's not being used, and the funds aren't being used the way they should be in order to do this. So it's a slap in the face, and it shows that the uncaringness or the unwillingness to help our youth in this situation.
Thank you for your question. What's your name and where are you from?
Good afternoon. My name is Arlene Mark Norman, and I'm a retired state employee, work for the Department of Juvenile Service. So I'm going to add a little bit more to that. I was just down in Memphis this weekend, and a call came in where they had students or kids in the building destroyed because they didn't have security in there. But my question to the committee is, the federal law requires the state agencies that receive federal funds to have Title VI programs, and that they have to have community outreach to those beneficiaries. I want to know, who can I talk to from the caucus to enhance that education to our citizens? We need help from the community. DCS needs help from the community. Probation and parole need help from the community. DHS needs help from the community. All of these departments need help. And they need to know, the community, the citizens need to know what's happening in state government. And it's not being run to the best interest of the citizens. My second question is, I have a friend that has ownership of the Booker T Hotel down in West Tennessee, and I noticed that Representative Hakeem has gotten some money for the Booker T partners of down in Shelby. He's trying to renovate that facility. It's the only facility on the National Green Book that was available for blacks that were traveling prior to the Civil Rights Movement. And we want to know, how can we get investors to renovate that project? Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here, and keep up the good fight. We're supportive of you.
Thank you for your questions.
Very quickly, I want to get to this. That location, we first need to find out if you want investors or you want looking for state dollars to go toward it. Okay, so for the investors, and this is across the state for persons in our community to take advantage of. There's a thing that we have not really heard much about, but ECD is supposed to be working on. It's called opportunity zones. If you have property in an opportunity zone, because of the federal law that was passed several years ago, if investors come and would invest in that business or land that you own, they are permitted to not have to pay pay income tax on the return of their investment for up to 10 years, and maybe sometimes beyond that. So I would encourage persons who have businesses in the opportunity zones to explore those opportunities. That may be something also, because most opportunity zones are unfortunately in African American neighborhoods because they're depressed financially, and oftentimes they cannot get loans from the bank or the private investors. But this is the way the federal government said to encourage persons to invest in those areas. And so this may be one way for that. The second way, I think, just contact the chairman and see if President Pai King would be interested in maybe carrying a budget amendment for next year, to see how much may be requested to help the facility out. And that's oftentimes how we do get things funded. If we don't get them in the governor's budget before he makes his state address, we oftentimes have a chance to have a budget amendment that can get some things in there.
Okay, her first question was who could you talk to as far as a caucus member? Yes, the first question. Oh, right here, Mr. Robinson. Thank you for your question. What's your name and where are you from?
Good evening, I'm Reverend Dr. Judy Cummings, Livingston County, and my representative is Vincent Dixie, and my senator is Brenda Gilmore. Thank you all for being here. It's good to see this idea come to fruition, for you all to come into the community to do a town hall. I am here with the African American Clergy Collective of Tennessee, and my first question is, how do you plan to stay in communication with the community? What you're doing here this evening is wonderful. Perhaps what you all could do with all of your staff is get together and have a collective newsletter that comes out to the community to let us know what it is you're doing, and then we know how to best speak up to fight. But also I want to know, and I'm asking this as a direct question and I need a direct answer, will the Black Caucus agree to meet with Black leaders here in Nashville, including the African American Clergy Collective, the Tennessee NAACP, Equity Alliance, Urban League, the Black National Assembly, just to name a few? Will you all agree to meet with us so that together we can develop an agenda over the summer? And if so, who do we contact to make that arrangement happen?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that alley-oop. I feel like I planted that question. Two things. We've already started that process of meeting, and right now, this town hall meeting is partially a product of our partnership with the African American Clergy of Tennessee. So that's a sealed marriage already. Well, we're in constant contact with President Sweetlove, also NAACP, and let's keep her in our prayers also. And 100 Black men, 100 Black women, they're all sponsors of this statewide tour, as a matter of fact, and some others. Part of our agenda is funny. I tell you, there's like an alley-oop question. Our agenda that we set forth 2 years ago actually calls for one big annual meeting also of everything Black in the state of Tennessee. So there's Black lawyers, Black business leaders, NAACP, Black clergy, which y'all have taken the lead on, we appreciate it, and every other organization. That is in our strategic plan. And so we are moving forward. This town hall meeting is also a part, or this statewide tour and the town hall meetings are also part of that strategic plan that we laid out and voted on, before, when I first took office. Also, being on having our agenda set for health, education, and how do we put money back into your households is part of that same agenda. And so you're right on. One of the things that we also been suggesting at every town hall meeting, across the state is, I'm coming to you, Chairman, is that, we pull together in our immediate local areas, the Black Caucus of elected officials in, let's say, Davidson County. We've already done it in Shelby County. And along with that, we have what I call a monthly meeting of stakeholders in Shelby County, in my part of the county anyway, which is a micro version of what we need to be doing, because it creates a pipeline of communication from the state level all the way to your community leader level and into the households. And that's vitally important, because that's where the real information comes from. And so it's not even a town hall meeting, it's a breakfast for me in my district, but we get to hear from all of our community at least once a month, because we break bread together. And I suggest that everyone, you know, in their immediate districts do it, and then we do it on a larger scale, and then we do it on a macro scale across the state. So that would be that's the structure that I'm thinking.
Sure. I'm giving you the direct answer he was looking for. Not that he can give him one, that wasn't that. Why don't we work together to make that happen? Because that's one of the things he's saying is that it takes a lot to do statewide. Let's start with Davidson County. Let's start right here. And I've got to work with you on this, and you can help me get all these people to the table. Because sometimes Reverend Judy Cummings can get some people to come that Vincent Dixie can't get to come. And I'm serious, you know my number. I mean, you literally live around the corner from me. But I would like to do that, and maybe we can meet monthly, because like I said, we need to do this immediately, because if we start to meet in January, it's too late. Everything's already done. So we need to try to work to get them, even if it starts with a couple of people, maybe we can grow, we can at least meet monthly or bi-monthly until we can get something scheduled. But I'm willing to do that, and we can work together to do that.
Wonderful, and I'm speaking to meet with those folks, those organizations who are already on the front lines doing justice work, who can give you the information, because we hear from the people and what the people need and want.
Well, let's start next week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What's your name, where are you from?
Good evening, Pastor Aaron Marble. Thank you all for being here. Two things. First, there are a host of questions in the chat. And so what I would like to do is we'll work with our staff to make sure those questions get to you. And so folks that are in the chat, if you will put your email and your question, so we can make sure we get to them. There are a few persons still in line here, so we won't be able to get to everybody's question in the chat, but we'll get that to our representatives. Okay, great. The second thing is, and I gotta be quick, but there historically in our communities have been a sense of celebrity tied to elected officials. Same type of thing with pastors, that just getting to the seat was enough. And there was notoriety, celebration connected with that. Probably every day now in Nashville is somebody's pastor's anniversary day. And that does nothing for our community.
That's right. That's
How do we move from celebrity to strategy? And what is the legislative agenda you all have prepared for 2023, and how was it developed?
Mr. Love.
Thank you, Pastor Marble. Let me, if I can, start with this. We are all grateful for the chance to serve in elected office. Oftentimes, there's a disconnect, I think, between what people may think we are equipped with when it comes to staff, what you see in DC. We all only have one staff person, and that staff person covers a multitude of things and allows us to do a great work legislatively. The challenge for us that we have to overcome, to your point, Pastor, is how do we engage the community and get the community to also understand the process. The process of passing a bill is not just, we have an idea, Chairman Parkinson signs off on it, Senator Gilmore sponsors it in the Senate, and then we go and maybe Senator Campbell signs on and it passes. The reality of the world is this. Many of us on the Democratic side are suffering from the way that Democrats in the past treated Republicans in the House and Senate, and now the Republicans are in charge. They are doing us the way they did them. And I know it's because we oftentimes go to our leadership and say, hey, why are y'all doing this? And say, well, y'all did it to us. And we say, listen, we gotta stop that. And so moving from the celebrity status to actual policy is a long process of getting things done. But I'm sure that we all, I think, are grateful for the chance to serve. And much of what we talk about with what Representative Dixie and Chairman Parkinson talk about with Dr. Cummings is getting us back in conversations with our grassroots organizations to talk about what bills may be sponsored and also what tangible benefits can be made from collaboratives with different departments and agencies. There's over $700 million in unspent TANF funds, temporary assistance needed families. Communication with the Black Caucus several years back was about how to set aside $1 million per region just the organization that the Black Caucus would help get the word out about, right? And so we do those things, but we also need folks to be able to sign up for those programs and carry those programs out. So I hope I answered your question about the collaboration to actually have policy made and have a conversation with folks about how it gets done to understand the process.
And Rev, let me answer about the agenda for 2023. This statewide tour is the beginning of that agenda. And so we don't want to go prepare an agenda without the input from everyone across the state. So that's why we're doing the town hall meetings, so that we can hear from everyone across the state to prepare that agenda for 2023. And let me give you a little background also, Rev, in regards to budget. We have to be before the governor in September. You know, that's why we're doing this now. That's why we're doing this so early, so we can hear from everyone. And then when we get, gather all of the information that we've gathered from the town hall meetings and from, hearing from people across the state, then we put our agenda together and we go before the governor. So things that have to go into the budget, we got to get it there early. So
I'm taking a pass on privilege.
yes, you got it. It's your house.
My question is, with that, it seems like we're behind the ball with our counterparts, though. They seem to have this thing sold up, and I know they've got a majority, so that makes it difficult. But if we're starting now, what about summer session? What can we be doing specifically to have a strategy to go in to defeat? I think we've courted too long, and courting has got us, and tiptoeing has got us too far behind. And so what can we do specifically? What can I tell Jefferson Street on Sunday we can do to help steer this ship? And I think that's what we all need. We need some partnership with you all, some guidance for practical steps that we can begin to turn this ship, because they're not nice. They don't care how you did them, and you're not going to be doing like that. Somebody need to step up and do them to get done so we can get some stuff done.
I think the attention has been shown with what the clergy did. Clergy started meeting with Black legislators. Clergy came down to the Capitol and sat in committee meetings. Clergy got to see how their impact can influence those who are making decisions. I promise you, what we can do, as easy template is, start meeting next month in August and September, again about the process, so people know when a committee meets. I'm open to even meet folks down at the Capitol to go into committee rooms so you feel more comfortable. I think a lot of our folks don't come down to the Capitol because we don't think we should be there, and we don't feel comfortable being there. Pastor David Tucker came down there when we were dealing with a bill that was going to strip away Community Oversight Board. He got to see just the intensity of those committee rooms, but because he was there, at least somebody saw someone like us in the committee meetings. So I think that's the next step, because oftentimes when people show up in those committee meetings and people look out there and see who's out there, they will change a little bit of how they're going to vote, because they know that we put a face on the issue. It's not just some random folks out there saying that we want you to change the way that they vote. So I'm hoping to meet with folks over the next few months to go through tutorials on how to even track legislation.
Right, and thank you for that. And the last thing on that too is we got to understand the process. We have to understand the process. If we don't do this now, if we did this a month later, we would not be able to get your information in before the governor and before all of the commissioners of the departments. Right, there's money in the departments. Right, the Department of Human Services has almost $800 million sitting in it. But we have to hear from you in order to decide how we are going to move collectively as a unit to be able to go into the Department of Human Services and say, hey, here's what we need, here's why we need, here are the organizations we can run it through. We were able to get money into, but we got almost 300 million into TSU this year. Representative Love? 318 million? $318 million into TSU this year. That came from the Black Caucus, right? It was the Black Caucus that led the charge on getting passenger rail studied so we can get passenger rail across the state. They came from the Black Caucus. But then you got to understand the procedures and the processes that are in place. I had to learn them. It took me a few years to learn them and figure out how to get money into the budget. But there's a whole entire process. That's why we're out here so early right now in the middle of summer. Yes, sir.
Real quick, we
I just
have
want
about
to-
10 minutes.
Yeah, really, really quickly, is that, this goes back to what Pastor Judy Cummings was saying, and also with, Thursday of Love, is that once we figure out this mechanism, of how we're gonna communicate with each other, just show up. Show up. And also, not just show up at the community meetings, but we have to show up at the polls. We gotta elect people who actually, excuse me, Pastor, who give a damn. And that's what we have to do. Thank you, Mike.
That's right.
Thank you. Okay, we have about 10 minutes, so we want to get all 400 questions, so if you can make them direct. And then panel, please be concise and direct with your answers so that we can give all these people an opportunity to get their questions answered. What's your name and where are you from?
Nicholas Thomas, Nashville, Tennessee. Grew up in the neighborhood. Grew up as Senator Thelma Harper's just little bitty child. Anyway, so in the land of synthetics and in the land where everything is readily available to young people, i.e. marijuana, the education was there for me as a young man to know that this are the consequences of marijuana, consequences of cigarettes, consequences of the gateway, okay? My point is that how do we get the education to these kids, let them know that marijuana is not just the marijuana of your grandfather's age, it's just a plant. It's mostly synthetic, very harmful, and often added with things in it that are not from the ground, which, i.e. gun violence. So if you take the harmful drugs and mix with marijuana, you get an insane child for a moment that can catastrophically do something like in Texas, and so forth and so forth. How do we get that education to the children so they don't have that mindset? They know they have a chance and that they're not forgotten and they are the future.
Thank you.
One thing we do need, and to your point, we do need more education. More education, not just on marijuana, but all of the drugs that end up hitting the hands of our children. So they'll know the consequences, so they'll know what the effects are, what the long-term effects are. Because many times, people see that, a lot of times we look 15 minutes into the future instead of looking 15 years. So we have to show people long-term effects of, not just marijuana, but all of the things that are hitting our streets.
That's right.
I just want to just really quickly, and I may just look on the other side of that. So I'm an opponent for medical marijuana because my mom, she had lung cancer. She passed away in 2018, and I saw how the effects helped her have some appetite to it. So I think there's a fine line that we work with, because if it was, I don't say that we legalize it for recreational use at this particular moment, but there are people that need relief from this that are hurting right now.
That's right.
They can do medical, so it's not an all or nothing type deal.
Thank you. Sir, what's your name and where are you from?
My name is Daryl Carey. I'm from Wilson County.
I'm sorry, let me stop you. We're no one else in line for this. We're done at 7:30. You all are fine, but please, no one else. I'm sorry, we don't have time for more. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, I got 3 quick questions. One, what are we doing about affordable housing for our elderly that's living in Nashville? So we can build generational
It ain't
wealth.
affordable.
2, why are we sitting here making excuses that we're not taking care of our kids? And the fact of waiting on bills, waiting on that, we gotta work with the community and the churches to get things done.
That's what.
I think that's the key. I have a nonprofit worker, we have to make the community do that. And then another question is, why are we still thinking about what is black comics? My daughter his mom is white. So what does black mean for you guys? Thank you.
Now that's an interesting question.
It sure is.
So are you asking that because you have a biracial daughter, or do you?
No, I'm asking, are we really working to bring the community together? Because the community looks different. It's not black and white.
Okay.
There's no such thing as
I got one.
affordable housing.
First question, affordable housing. So we have been engaged at the state level of trying to stop restrictive bills, what we call preemption bills, right? Because affordable housing really starts at the local level. And we have been trying to vote down bills that restrict cities like Nashville from incentivizing developers to build more affordable housing. So that's the first question answered. And that's part of what we're doing for affordable housing. Your local government can do more, they can put more money in the budget for it, but we also have to make sure that the state level is not restrictive preemptive bills. Second piece, I think we all agree we can help our kids. And if you have community engagement, if you have nonprofits, and you have state agencies working together, whether we provide some state funds or grant dollars, I think that helps move the needle on helping our kids. I think we all want to do a better job with helping our children, and sometimes we not give excuses, but give examples of where the difficulty may lie, right? Third question, Black Caucus. Coincidentally, my father was here when the Black Caucus was formed. He got elected in 1968. What he discovered was Democratic members and Republican members that were Caucasian were not paying attention to the 3 Black elected officials. So they had to take very important stances on bills to get attention. Because what they did was they represented the interests of marginalized communities.
That's right.
A lot of folks don't know this. The 1962 Supreme Court decision, Baker versus Carr, was about Tennessee.
Let's go, sir. It's not your turn. Oh, you were sitting. Okay, I apologize. I'm sorry. He rubbed off on me a little bit. I'm sorry. Okay, what's your name and where are you from?
I'm from Dan. My name is Dan Clemens and I'm from Nashville, Mount Juliet, Old Hickory, Piedmont. But anyway, I want to tell y'all first, Vincent Dixon told me not to say anything. But I want to ask another question, seriously. What can we do to get a bill passed about the gun violence as far as people leaving guns in their cars? That is a major one right there. You ain't gonna see a whole lot of us to leave our guns in our cars. But a whole lot of us are going to their neighborhoods and getting their guns and using them. So what can we do? Now, can we do something in that order to get a bill passed where if you leave your gun in your car, you suffer the consequences? Whether they take your gun away, whether they fine you, or whether they put you in jail. It ought to be against the law to leave your gun in your car.
All right.
I carry my gun. I don't even carry my gun. They said, oh, I'm going to protect my family. If you get me, you're going to get me out on the street, but not around my family. Okay?
Right. Thank you.
So for guns left in cars, in many buildings, for those of us that carry firearms, there's a lot of buildings that you can't take your firearm into. Matter of fact, this meeting right here is one of them. So I'm pretty sure if we go in the parking lot right now, there will be a few guns in some cars. However, for any firearm left in a vehicle, it needs to be in a lockbox.
That's right.
The state, we tried to get vouchers. Did you carry that bill? Yeah. Yeah, they kill every bill that we come with to have something sensible in place. So we wanted to get a tax rebate or voucher for those that want to get lock boxes for their firearms in their vehicles, so that your firearm, of course, it can still get stolen because they can steal your whole car, but it would deter a lot of those open the door and grab people. That's what we call snatch and grab. It'll deter a lot of the snatch and grab that happens so often.
Thank you. What's your name and where are you from?
Hi, my name is Jamel Campbell. I'm a black man from Nashville, Tennessee. First, I want to say thank y'all for y'all work that y'all do. I'm a community organizer with the Black Nashville Assembly and the Southern Movement Committee. And I hear y'all talk a lot about the violence of white supremacy that y'all experience on a daily basis. So I want to ask a straight up question. And also, the state political landscape from what you all are talking about, because I do local work, seems to mirror what we experience locally on the ground every single day. So my question is straight up, and you don't have to answer this first one, this is really an invitation, is I think we're ready to get grimy and off the books. That's one. And my second question though is how do we fight state legislation that would further criminalize and incarcerate black people and an attempt to address white supremacist mass shootings?
Well, so Jesus.
This mass shooting piece, I had a bill a couple years back after the Emmanuel shooting, trying to make those kind of things a hate crime. It got voted down in committee. The help you all can give, what we've talked so far, is showing up in the committee meetings, helping us as we go to meetings with our colleagues, and saying it's not just us who want this bill passed, but here is a young man from Nashville who doesn't want this bill to pass. When we have bills that we're trying to promote, like Representative Hakeem promoted about teaching black history in our school system, teaching about the history of many of our neighborhoods. We just need partnerships, you know. We need people who can go with us into those meetings and have conversations with our legislators to let them see that there are other faces out there than just ours. That's one solution I think we can come to.
Yeah, and thank you for your question too, sir. I was on the criminal committee, and because of moments like it just happened a few minutes ago, they kicked me off of it. And so, you know, because I'll give you an example. You know, I'm uncut. I'm going to give you my uncut truth, right? And one of the things that I stated to them about, because they're always trying to push these oppressive pieces of legislation aimed at us, aimed at our people. Real talk. You know, there's a whole industry that's making a lot of money off the incarceration of black and poor people, right? And so one of the things I told them, I said, you know, the only difference between me and my friends that had felonies is they got caught and I didn't. Growing up in the communities that we grew up in, that's the real truth. They got caught and I didn't. That's the difference between me being a state representative and them being a felon. Real talk. Right, I know I'm the only one right there that committed a crime anyway. And so, but we're always, he said I am the only one, right? But we're always in defensive mode, and that's a problem. That's a problem, and that's why, you know, this agenda, the things that we talk about, you know, and pulling all of the parties together, your party, your group. You know, I'm inviting you in also. Please come and be part of us, and we'll be part of you. You know, it's important for us to have an offensive-minded agenda, right? And then, but let's look at reality too. We still are in a super minority. You know, so when we run legislation to try to bring more expungement or more opportunities for expungement, more opportunities for a second chance, more opportunities to life. Right? More opportunities I ran some legislation that said anybody that's in the chain of incarcerating an individual should not be able to have stock in private prisons. They killed it. They killed it. So politics is math, y'all. If you don't leave with anything, at least take this home. Politics is math. That's all it is. The person, that too, follow the money, but the person who has the most votes wins. That's what it boils down to. We can pass anything we want to pass if we got the votes. Right. For us, it takes 50 votes. And you know, I'm big on process, and I think it's important to educate everyone in here. It takes 50 votes to pass a bill. 50 votes in the House, 17 in the Senate. Right? 50 votes. It's 26 Democrats. 25 Democrats. 25, actually 25 and a half now. 25 Democrats now. So that means that anything that we pass, and everybody up here is passing bills, just so you know, anything that we pass, we have to get 25 of them, or close to that, to agree to it. Get that? Politics is math. And so we have to work and find ways to work across the aisle in order to get legislation to protect our people, or to fight for our people, or to benefit our people. Right?
And now that's some of the actions that are aimed at the community aren't with bullets. The state only spent 3.3% of its procurement dollars with African American businesses.